Leader.
Thank you. My question is to the Treasurer. Are there any pre-settlement conditions that are yet to be met before the government-owned land at Gillman will be transferred to Adelaide Capital Partners?
Deputy Premier.
Yes, Mr Speaker, thank you. I thank the Deputy Leader for that question. The situation with respect to the arrangements with Australian Capital Partners are that there were certain matters that needed to be completed by the government, and then there were certain matters which needed to be undertaken by the proponents themselves. To the best of my recollection, the matters that needed to be attended to by the government have been attended to, and what remains is for certain steps to be undertaken by the proponents of that project. As to exactly how progressed they are with those matters that they have to undertake, I'm not at this present time able to provide any detailed information, but that is my understanding of where we are presently. So that is that inasmuch as the government was required to undertake certain steps, those steps have been undertaken, and now the onus, if you like, for further activity rests upon the proponents, who have to take certain steps in order to discharge what remains before the settlement can occur.
Supplementary.
Supplementary, Deputy Leader.
Either to the Treasurer or the Attorney. Is it the understanding, well, perhaps we would identify this, if the Attorney doesn't know what yet ACP have to do to complete their side of the bargain, will he inquire as to what they are and report back to the House and confirm that there won't be any transfer of the land to ACP until those preconditions are met?
Yes, look, I'm happy to get that information. I want to make it very clear, though, Mr Speaker, that to the extent, and I don't know this, so I'm putting this caveat out there so it's on the public record, to the extent that anything they need to do remains commercial in confidence, and I don't believe it does, but to the extent that it does, obviously I'd have to be circumspect about that. But otherwise, yes, I'm very happy to make those inquiries. And it is my understanding, Mr Speaker, that the final execution of the first phase of this agreement results in, from the government's point of view, an execution of a transfer, from their point of view, the payment of an amount of money, yes.
For the supplementary.
Deputy Leader.
And notwithstanding that there may be some preconditions still outstanding from ACP's perspective, and that the transfer of that first part of the contract you've indicated, will the government commit to not transferring any of that land until we have Mr Lander's report from the ICAC inquiry?
Deputy Premier.
Well, I don't see that there's any connection between those two events, and I want to make it very clear. But the government has entered into an agreement with ACP, and if ACP fulfil the preconditions within that agreement, the government has an obligation to oblige by doing what it has promised to do. And it wouldn't be good in terms of the state being a party that people could have confidence in dealing with if we didn't adopt that attitude to commercial arrangements we entered into with whoever it might be. But I can assure the House and the Deputy Leader that, so far as I'm concerned, there is zero prospect of handing over title to the land without being paid for it.
Supplementary.
Well, the convention is you have 3 supplementaries. Let's just make it a new question.
Thank you. how is it the Attorney-General is able to recall that there's an obligation on part of the government to actually proceed with the first stage of the contract if you can't even remember what the preconditions are that are outstanding?
Deputy Premier.
Look, I don't think I said I can't remember what they are. I think I said I didn't want to go into what they were, and I don't want to test my memory. But if you want me to have a go. It is my understanding, for example, that they need to make certain applications in respect of the land that they propose to acquire, and that these applications must be made by them, and they must be made and progressed by them. The government is not in a position to make these applications on their behalf. So these applications need to be made and they need to be progressed. And at the end of that process, assuming that the applications are successful, then we have a state of affairs which enables the rest of the transaction to proceed.
The Deputy Leader.
Next question, sir, if I may. My question again is to the Treasurer or the Attorney-General.
Oh, just before you start, I should call to order the member for Schubert, who won't comment on the Deputy Premier's apparel, and the members for Florey and Little Para, and I warn for the first time the member for Stewart.
Oh. You didn't change your underpants, that's what he's complaining about. Sorry, my question, Mr Speaker, is to the Treasurer or the Attorney-General. Why did the government wait 6 weeks from when the land subject of the Gilman land deal was rezoned to announce the rezoning?
Deputy Premier.
Can I say, Mr Speaker, the Deputy should be aware that I do change daily, and that was a very hurtful innuendo. And as to the member for Schubert, what is wrong with the presentation? Anyway, I know I can't ask him that question.
You're paying too much attention, Stephen.
So,
Focus.
I'm focusing. Okay. What happened was this. What happened was this. There was, and I don't think any of this will come as a surprise to anybody, but what happened was, given that in this particular case, the roles I have in respect of Renewal SA and Planning Minister mean that I would be the same person on both ends of this particular transaction. It was judged that it was necessary from the point of view of things not only being done properly but to appear to have been done properly, that another member of the Cabinet was invited to deal with this matter. And indeed, that is what happened. That is what happened. And the Minister for Police and Emergency Services agreed to undertake this exercise. He did so according to what he saw as being the appropriate investigations and the appropriate degree of satisfaction from his point of view. As I do, Mr Speaker, in my role as Planning Minister. I take as long as I think I need to take in order to be satisfied that a matter is appropriately dealt with. And so it's not for me either to inquire of my ministerial colleague or to cast any aspersions about the method by which he went around that, because I know, having done it myself, there are times when you want more information, you want to be certain about what you're doing. In any event, he progressed with the matter. He ultimately made a decision. That matter was then, I think, the decision required a gazettal, which occurred week or 10 days or something of that nature ago, a couple of weeks ago, and that's how the matter's proceeded. So all of that, so far as I'm concerned, is completely orthodox and entirely appropriate.
Supplementary.
To the Minister for Police. So why did it take the government, in particular the Minister for Police, 6 weeks from the time of his approval of the Gilman rezoning to have it gazetted?
Look, Mr Speaker, as I said before, it is not
Member
really...
for Schubert's warned.
You should get a blue one with dots instead of a stripy one.
The Deputy Premier is called to order.
Oh, I'm sorry. Anyway, there is, as I said before, nothing unorthodox about anything to do with the process. The minister was entitled to take whatever period of time it took, and just so people understand, there are numerous steps in relation to this matter. I mean, not only does the minister have to become satisfied in himself that this is appropriate, then there is, if I'm not mistaken in this case, there's a process by which there has to be a gazettal. That takes some time in organising it.
6 weeks.
Deputy Premier is warned, Deputy Leader is warned for the second and final time.
So I don't think there's anything exceptional about this, and as far as I'm concerned, the interest in this matter now moves to ACP to see how they get on with making their various applications.
Deputy Leader.
Thank you. My question is to the Treasurer. Has the Treasurer now checked with his staff as to whether the Gilman development was discussed with the oil and gas industry representatives during the Minister's trip to Canada in February this year, and if so, with whom did those discussions take place?
I have, and no, it wasn't. And the reason it wasn't is that the Prospectors and Developers Association of Canada is a mining conference, not an oil and gas conference.
Question to the Treasurer again. Prior to announcing the Festival Plaza car park deal with the Walker Corporation in February 2014, had the state government obtained legal advice regarding the risk of a compensation claim by Walker Corporation if the government did not proceed with the Walker-led development in that area?
Deputy Premier.
The period that the Deputy Leader is asking about is obviously back some 18 months ago, and I will have to double check to be able to provide information to the House about this. I do recall, however, that obviously it was necessary to understand the nature and extent of obligations existing between the state government and Walker Corporation in the context of negotiations that were occurring at that time. It was necessary to understand the process which had been gone through to arrive at that point in time. And if I can just explain that a little, the original Walker Corporation agreement, and I use the word agreement in inverted commas, arose from an expression of interest, if I remember the process correctly, which was initiated by the former Minister for Transport and Infrastructure, the Honourable Patrick Conlon, who was made aware of the fact that the car park immediately to the north of this building is slowly crumbling into dust because it's got concrete cancer or some other terrible failing in it, and that doing nothing was not an option. The only question was what were we going to do and how quickly when we were going to get on with it. And so there was at that point a commissioning of I think it was a request for a proposal process, if I remember correctly, or expression of interest. In any event, a number of people came forward, and from that process there was a sifting, and ultimately the preferred candidate turned out to be Walker Corporation. And so at that stage, there was an agreement that if we were going forward with a car park, the preferred person or group entity to deal with would be the Walker Corporation. And from that point, there were ongoing discussions with Walker Corporation about moving from that point to the point where there would be a finalisation of the matter. And of course, I personally was not involved in the early part of that process. As that was said, if I remember correctly, a process that was initiated by the Honourable Pat Conlon. And so I do know that I sought advice as to the nature of the relationship existing in law, the contractual relationship existing in law between the government and Walker Corporation, so as I could understand what the parameters of any contractual negotiations between the government and Walker might be. So the short answer, I guess, because that was the long answer, the short answer is I have a recollection of seeking information about the nature and boundaries of the contractual nature of the agreement between Walker Corporation and the government in order to understand how the negotiations would proceed. I don't recall there being, certainly as far as I'm concerned, a question specifically in terms of that.
Member's time has expired. Deputy Leader.
So why was it necessary for the attorney then to even get advice when it was absolutely clear from the terms and conditions in respect of the invitation to the Walker Corporation to explicitly outline the states and developers' rights, including there was no contract or legal obligation, all costs were to be borne by the developer, the state had a right to terminate the process at any stage without compensation, and there was no express or implied contract?
Deputy Premier.
Well, Mr Speaker, I don't think I've said anything inconsistent with what the Leader of the Opposition just said. I'm simply saying that as a prudent person, and yes, I'm aware of those words, I'm also aware that there had been a process that had gone on for some time, and there had been a process which had started with a request for RFP, what's that? Request for, you know what I mean? Proposal, that's right. Moving through various stages. I wanted to be clear in my own mind what was or was not a matter of contractual certainty between the parties, and I think that's a prudent thing for me to do. As I said, I don't recall having asked the question that the Deputy Leader implied in her before last question, but I'm happy to check that.
Final supplementary, if I may, in respect of this issue to the attorney. Having received that advice, were you satisfied that Walker Corporation had no right to compensation in respect of the consideration of the EEO not proceeding?
Deputy Premier.
Well, look, I'm not sure, without reviewing all of the paperwork for that I should even attempt to answer that question. But can I make it very clear that so far as I'm concerned, the issue at that time and up until the resolution of the matter, which occurred sometime during the last 6 months, the issue at the time was, how do we get to a landing point with Walker Corporation which is going to work? Or do we get to a landing point with Walker Corporation which is going to work? And so it was never, as far as I was concerned, a question of assuming that we were bound to have some unsatisfactory conclusion and consider what the consequences of that might have been. We were working on the basis that we had gone through a very long process with Walker, that they had been in discussion with various instrumentalities of the government over this proposal. At the same time, the government was, I think, coming to the conclusion, which we have, I think, stated many times here, that that plaza development was going to be the anchor piece of the whole of the riverbank. And it was going to hold the whole thing together. So obviously we were interested in getting a very good outcome there, a very good outcome. And I think, Mr Speaker, that the fact that we have been able to reach an agreement with Walker Corporation, and we have now the beginning of I hope before the end of this calendar year, we'll start to see the beginning of the construction work, or at least the demolition work, down here, is going to be a great outcome. And I think everyone will be extremely happy with that.
Member for Taylor.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Defence Industries. Can the Minister advise the House about what influence the state government can exercise in awarding major defence projects to be based in South Australia?
Minister for Investment and Trade.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the honourable member for Taylor for her question. And I'm reminded today that some...
The member for Newland has been doing it all day and accordingly is called to order.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I'm reminded that some 10 years ago, when members from both sides of this House joined in high praise for the state's efforts in awarding the $6 billion air warfare destroyer project to SA. The decision was made by the National Security Committee of Cabinet in Canberra. It was influenced by 2.5 years of work by a team of experts headed by retired Rear Admiral Kevin Scarce. It was influenced by the bipartisan support for a state government decision to make a major investment in skills and infrastructure at the Osborne shipbuilding site known as Techport. We invested $350 million of the state taxpayers' money in a package to help the federal government achieve its goals. That most relevant decision resulted in 3,000 direct jobs and indirect jobs and a major boost to the state's economy. It resulted in new technologies and spin-offs and to other parts of the South Australian economy, particularly in the many SMEs that are the backbone of our economy. That $350 million state taxpayer, state government investment included a ship lift, transfer system, wharf and associated dredging, and 30 hectares for subcontractors to set up operations at the site. There were partnerships between the South Australian Government, DSTO and the University of South Australia. South Australia won the role as the central site for the AWD by having a bipartisan political approach, done, I might add, with the support of then West Australian Premier Jeff Gallop, because the ASC maintain a fleet sustainment base in WA employing 185 people. The current WA government might want to reflect on that. Major contributors to the SA effort included the Defence Industry Advisory Board, the Economic Development Board, Robert Champion de Crespigny, Coalition Defence Ministers Ian McLaughlin, former Chief of Navy David Shackleton John White and former head of Transfield, who guided the Anzac Ships project. Malcolm Kinnaird, of course, Rear Admiral Scarce, to name just a few. Other relevant players from this state included Unions SA, the AMWU, the Australian Workers Union, the Communication, Plumbing and Electrical Trades Union, all of who worked with ASC management with the cooperation of the state to get a result. At the time, Mr Speaker, there was great support from then opposition leader Rob Kerrin. In May 2005, a gracious Mr Kerrin stood up in the House and congratulated everyone involved in the bid, including the Premier and the Treasurer, who I think at the time he's actually here in the chamber, in the very influential position of the Minister for Defence Industries.
The Minister is called to order for making reference to the gallery.
Indeed, sir. In the time of the Howard Coalition government, Mr Speaker, there was solid bipartisan support. a team of South Australian ministers in the Howard government were on South Australia's side. But today, Mr Speaker, the senior Liberal in South Australia says the South Australian government is irrelevant. We don't need a Defence Industries Minister.
Point of order. Time on. Deputy Leader.
Point of order. The Minister is clearly now debating.
Yes, I uphold the point of order. Minister.
Therefore, we don't need a shadow minister for Defence Industries, Mr Speaker, because industry now know they want to get rid of Defence SA, they want to get rid of the board, and they don't want us to be the defence state, Mr Speaker. A new Liberal policy, no longer the defence state, get rid of the board, get rid of Defence SA, and don't have a minister. Goodbye, Member for Stewart.
I hope the Minister has got that off his spleen now. Point of order, Deputy
Debating
Leader.
the matter, defying your ruling.
Yes, I uphold all of those points of order, and therefore I warn the Minister for the first time. But while I'm at that, I call to order the members for Davenport, Hammond, Mount Gambier and Wright. The member for Davenport will not blame the member for Mount Gambier, as is customary. And I warn for the first time and for the second time the member for Hartley. Member for Giles.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I sincerely hope you'll be wearing black and white next year. My question is to the Minister for Arts. Minister, how has the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra been expanding their program and artistic team to attract new audiences?
The cultural attaché.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And it is appropriate the member for Giles should ask me this question, because he is one of has an enormous attachment to the arts, and I congratulate him. I congratulate him for it. He's not quite there with Kevin Foley, but he is enormous, unswerving devotion to the cultural life of our state. Mr Speaker, the Adelaide Symphony Orchestra plays a vital role in contributing to our city's rich, vibrant culture. Their 2015 program has been incredibly diverse, not only performing a traditional classical repertoire, but seeking out new audiences in contemporary performance, such as the Doctor Who Symphonic Spectacular and Danny Elfman's music from the films of Tim Burton. The ASO is currently on touring the regions with the Mozart to Rodrigo concert series. I understand around 40 musicians are currently en route to Whyalla, having spent their weekend in the state's southeast. Aside from the concerts, the ASO are engaging with the local music students, running their Tigers and Teapots program, as well as holding brass, woodwind and guitar workshops. While the ASO was in Mount Gambier, they had a joint rehearsal and performed their concert with members from the Limestone Coast Symphony Orchestra, and I know the member for Mount Gambier was there and thoroughly enjoyed the concert. The Limestone Coast Symphony Orchestra is a 70-piece local orchestra comprising of musicians from all walks of life, from music students and teachers, retired professional musos and talented amateurs. To credit to General Manager Jenny Matthews and Hamilton-based conductor Angus Christie that this incredible organisation not only exists but thrives in the local community. The experience that members of the orchestra would have gained from being able to rehearse and perform alongside one of the best orchestras in the country is invaluable and has formed a very fruitful connection between the two organisations. I'd like to wish the ASO all the best for their concert at Middleback Arts Centre tonight, and I understand there are still tickets available, so the member for Giles, if he can make sure that his family and friends go along. Mr Speaker, in 2016 the ASO is also welcoming a new artistic team with one of Britain's most outstanding artists, Geoffrey Tate, coming on board as principal guest conductor and artistic advisor. The brains behind the unforgettable 1998 Ring Cycle, Pinchas Uckermann, returning as artist in residence, and Nicholas Carter taking up the reins as principal conductor. At 29 years of age, Nicholas will not only be one of the youngest conductors to lead one of our country's major orchestras, he's also the first Australian to be appointed to such a post in 26 years. Many thanks to Vincent Ciccarello, the hardworking team and obviously the musicians of the ASO for all they do contributing to the cultural vibrancy of our state. The ASO's 2016 program will be officially launched on the 6th of October. I can't wait to see this incredible Adelaide institution, what they have in store for what will be their 80th year.
Member for Stewart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is for the Treasurer. Can the Treasurer advise the House what provision for loss of land tax revenue he has included in the budget forward estimates associated with the announced removal of stamp duty on commercial real property transactions?
Treasurer.
What provision of land tax loss there is on the abolition of conveyance duty? I think you perhaps should reread that question and come back.
No, the deputy, the member for Stewart will not restate it.
Well, he just asked me to reread it.
No, he asked you to cogitate upon it.
Well, he asked me, his words were reread.
I don't think they were actually, if you check Hansard. So does the member have a supplementary question? If not, we'll go to the member for Mitchell.
Yeah, my supplementary question to the Treasurer is, would he please explain to the House why he thinks there's no connection between the state's land tax revenue and the removal of stamp duty on commercial real property transactions?
Treasurer.
Wow. I'm lost for words, and I'll explain this. And perhaps the two up-and-comers at the back.
Member for Unley is called to order.
Can I explain this to the I even noticed members of the gallery smiling. Mr Speaker, conveyance duty is charged at transaction. So when a commercial property is transacted,
Member for Schubert's warned for the second and final time.
When a commercial property is transacted, there is a charge at the transaction point. If the member is saying that somehow we will allow greater aggregation of properties because we're removing conveyance duty, people can therefore have multiple ownerships without paying the conveyance, it's true, but their land tax bills will be more substantial. If he's saying that people can disaggregate their properties because there's no conveyance, well, Mr Speaker, I am more than happy to go through this with the Shadow Minister about why we think the impacts will be minimal given the rate of land tax that we charge in this state. I think he is fundamentally confused between what a conveyance duty is and what a land tax is. A conveyance duty is at the point of transaction. You don't pay an annualised conveyance duty. You pay an annualised land tax. They're two separate charges. Now, I don't want to do damage to your leadership chances because I actually want you to succeed because I pray every night you get it. But
point of order.
Much as I would welcome you to this side of the House, I'm not asking you to be the new leader, and nor should be the Treasurer.
Yes, the Treasurer will address his remarks through the chair.
So I think what the member is saying is by removing conveyance duty, will there be greater disaggregation of properties, therefore ending multiple ownerships and therefore being able to move properties around in different ownerships to restructure their land tax liabilities. The Treasury have done some forecasts and that is relatively minor. But that wasn't the question. And the member for Adelaide is struggling to understand what's actually going on is that the member for Stewart has just humiliated himself in front of the Parliament.
If the point of order from the member for Adelaide or the member for Unley is that the Treasurer was mistaken in referring to one of them, then they'll be leaving the chamber for a bogus point of order. Do they still wish to make the point of order? Supplementary.
Supplementary. So is the, given that my question was what is the provision for loss of land tax, is the Treasurer saying that when stamp duty on commercial real property transactions is removed, and when people then find it relatively cheap to ungroup their properties and reduce their land tax...
Is this an explanation or a question?
Is he therefore saying that he thinks the provision is minimal?
Treasurer.
Mr Speaker, the intent of the government's tax changes, which the opposition ridiculed and then called on us to bring forward, were to try and encourage more transactions in this area. What we believe that transactional taxes are an inhibitor to economic activity. We believe that we want to see more people transacting, and indeed, what we'd like to see is more interstate investment in South Australia. Now, Mr Speaker, it is my belief and the Treasury's belief that there will be almost no impact on land tax receipts at all. And we, in fact, believe that our land tax receipts will grow year on, year out throughout the forward estimates. And, of course, they're published. And the member for Stewart should know that, but obviously doesn't. And as he's evolving his questions, as he's hearing the explanations, because he got it so horribly wrong in the first question.
The member for Stewart is warned for the second and final time.
Don't worry, it'll be over soon. So, Mr Speaker, I feel for the member for Stewart, and I almost feel his pain because I want him to do so well. But, you know, but I'm really concerned. Mr Speaker, I want to see more transactions. I want to see more ownerships in this state. I want to see us getting a per capita share of national investment into South Australia, into property. I know members opposite ridiculed these tax changes before they called on us to accelerate them, to accelerate jobs growth, despite them saying on budget day this will create not a single extra job. That's the logic we have to deal with members opposite. And the member just interjected these tax changes don't take place for another 3 years. That's wrong again. The truth is, on budget day, non-real property taxation, transactional taxes were abolished immediately, and as were all transactional taxes on all statutory licences, on goodwill, on IP, on plant and equipment, abolished on day one. Within 12 months of that budget will be the first tranche of further tax cuts in conveyance duty. So the opposition saying it won't happen for 3 years is fundamentally a lie.
Well, I would ask the Treasurer, in the interests of harmony, to withdraw the expression a lie.
Sir, I am oil on troubled waters. I withdraw a lie and replace it with a blatant falsehood.
The members for Chafee, Morialta and Mitchell are called to order, and the member for Morialta is warned for the first time. The member for Chafee is warned for the first time. The member for Mitchell.
My question is to the Minister for Transport. Will the Minister release the reports and findings from the investigation undertaken into the third safety ramp on the South Eastern Freeway?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and can I thank the member for Mitchell for his interest in this area. Indeed, he's been party to a lot of the discussions that have occurred in improving safety, not just on the South Eastern Freeway but in the industry. I've asked my department to put up onto the web page, which we've been maintaining for about a year now, about all of the improvements and changes that have been made to the South Eastern Freeway, that information that he's just referred to in his question. I'll check when that's going up and let the member know.
Member for Morphett.
Mr Speaker, my questions to the Minister. My questions to the Minister for Health.
The member for Schubert is very close to leaving the chamber. He's living dangerously. The member for Wright is warned for the first time.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My questions to the Minister for Health. Can and will the Minister now tell the House what the exact annual charge to taxpayers will be for the new Royal Adelaide Hospital PPP?
Minister.
You answered that yesterday. I think it was $396 million.
The
Leader of the Opposition had the answer. It was $396 million. Oh, big.
The member for Unley is warned for the first time. The member for MacKillop.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, my question is also for the Minister for Health. Can the Minister confirm that he supports the directive from Health SA that mandates standards which, and I quote, have been developed in accordance with contemporary professional, quality and safety standards and establish the minimum standards for the provision of health services for management of Category 1 caesarean section in hospitals in South Australia?
Minister.
I presume that where the member for MacKillop is going for this is with regard to the negotiations between Country Health SA and Naracoorte doctors, and there's a issue there with regard to the a fourth roster for for maternity or for birthing at Naracoorte, and the Naracoorte doctors have a position that they should have a fourth roster, and my advice, very strong advice from my department, is that is not something that is required under the standards, and in fact it is not something that exists anywhere else in any of our other country health sites, bar one. There is only one country health site in the state which has this fourth roster, which the Naracoorte doctors are asking. I also point out that under the current provisions of the 4 weeks, in every 4 weeks, one in every those 4 weeks, under the current arrangements, women have to travel from Naracoorte to Mount Gambier because under the contract, the Naracoorte doctors don't provide birthing coverage, one in every 4 weeks. And so women currently have to go from Naracoorte down to Mount Gambier. So yes, of course, I support the standards, but if the member for MacKillop is trying to suggest that whatever the standard is quoting has some connection with this issue, I would be very, very surprised if he was correct.
Member for MacKillop.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is again to the Minister for Health. Does the Minister condone Country Health SA's non-compliance with the directive, standards for Category 1 caesarean section in South Australia, particularly at Naracoorte Hospital, given that the directive states that compliance is mandatory and also states that it applies to Country Health SA sites?
Minister.
Well, I don't think the member for MacKillop actually listened to anything I'd said in my answer, because I had a pretty good idea that this is where he's going. I certainly do not accept any suggestion that what the Country Health have put to the Naracoorte doctors in any way breach any standards or any requirement that SA Health have. I think what we have put and is something that has been accepted by basically every other GP practice working in regional South Australia. The Naracoorte doctors are the last to hold out, and the simple fact is that they had been being paid more for what they were being provided, significantly more up till now, than other GP practices for what they were providing. And I don't think that that is fair, and I think that they should have to, of course, they're going to be perhaps financially a lot less well off under the proposal that's been put. But I don't think it's fair that doctors are getting paid significantly more than doctors working in a similar environment in another location. That's effectively what this dispute's about. But I certainly reject any suggestion that we would be asking the Naracoorte doctors to do anything that was either unsafe or did not comply with either what the accepted guidelines and protocols are with regard to maternity care or guidelines and protocols that are issued by SA Health.
Supplementary, sir.
Supplementary.
Can the Minister explain then to the House why he believes that a standard would be appropriate in metropolitan Adelaide, but expectant mothers and their babies should be treated with a relatively second-class service in regional South Australia?
Once again, the member for Naracoorte has just not listened to the answer. The member for MacKillop has not listened to the answer to the question. My answer is that I do not believe and do not accept that at any stage we would accept the Naracoorte doctors and women in Naracoorte to be birthed under standards that are in any way breach what are accepted medical standards and what are the guidelines that are issued for the department. You can say it till you're blue in the face, but it's simply untrue.
The member for Morford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Emergency Services. Is the Minister's South Australian Fire and Emergency Services Strategic Plan 2015-2025, including Project Darwin, just the Minister's failed emergency services restructure, one service model by a different name?
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I thank the honourable member for his question, and the answer is no.
The member
Mr Speaker, if that's the case, how does the Minister expect to go ahead with his strategic plan and the integrated service model when the UFU have banned their members from responding to the surveys over the integrated model?
Thank you,
Minister.
Mr Speaker. The integrated model and other parts of the strategic plan are being driven by the three chief officers and the CEO of SAFECOM. It is a draft document, it's a working document, and that I have the utmost confidence that those objectives of the plan will be achieved.
Further supplementary, Mr Speaker, then. Can the Minister tell the House why on page 4 of the strategic plan it talks about a combined not only management but also operational control, an integrated model? It's confusing operations, management and control.
Minister.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I thank the member for his question. I don't agree with his interpretation of the plan.
The member for Flinders.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Minister for Health. Can the Minister confirm that Country Health SA plans to discontinue the weekend locum service at the Accident and Emergency Department of the Port Lincoln Hospital?
Minister.
Oh, look, I'll double check, but I'd be very surprised. I don't know what if the member for Flinders is suggesting that we would not have doctors present there. The only thing I could think of is perhaps we'll be replacing the locum service perhaps with a salaried model, but certainly we would not be. I'll double check, but certainly not to my knowledge.
Member for Goyder.
Thank you, sir. My question is to the Minister for Health also. Can the Minister detail why the Regional Cancer Centre at the Wallaroo Hospital requires patients to initially use the oncologist at the Lyell McEwin Hospital, thus restricting people from using their oncologist of choice?
Minister for Health.
Well, I'll check, but normally what happens in the public health system is you don't get to use the doctor of your choice. That's the difference between public health provision and private health provision. And if you are a public patient, then you use the oncologist who's provided for you. You don't get to choose. That's why people take out private health cover, because they're prepared to pay extra in order to get the doctor of their choice. So unless they're private patients, that would be the reason.
Supplementary.
And given the Minister's response about the centre at Wallaroo, why then are people who do have private health, who live within the Copper Coast region, unable to use the facility at Wallaroo Hospital, and who surely it should have the capacity to do so?
Minister.
I'll find out. I mean, normally we're quite keen to have private patients in public hospitals because it provides a revenue stream. The only potential, I just need to find out why that's the case. Yeah.
Member for Finnis.
So the supplementary, and it goes on for the Minister's response that why indeed is it that the Cancer Treatment Centre at the Wallaroo Hospital only runs on a restricted basis, which as I understand it is 1 day per week?
Minister.
Well, again, I need to find out and get back to the member for Goyder.
Member for Finnis.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. And the Encounter Bay Eagles won last Saturday's grand final in Great Southern League. Maybe an omen. So my question is to the Minister for Health. Your government promoted that the employment of permanent doctors on site at South Coast District Hospital will reduce costs to the health system and implement better services at the hospital. Sir, is it correct that the costs incurred to date under the new model are over budget by $2 million due to Country Health SA's inability to secure doctors with the desired skill sets and lack of interested applicants at South Coast District Hospital, beg your pardon, since April?
Minister.
Certainly not my understanding. In fact, I know one of the doctors who's gone down there, and he's a very well-respected emergency department doctor who's gone to work at South Coast Hospital. But certainly I haven't been informed about either it being over budget or of it being there being any difficulty recruiting doctors. I imagine doctors would be very happy to go and live in beautiful Victor Harbour. The only thing that might in fact turn them off is the local member. Oh, come on, don't be so sensitive. Goodness me.
The delicate member for Unley has got a point of order.
Yes, sir. The Minister's making personal reflections upon a member.
Yes,
it's against standing orders.
I uphold the point of order.
The indelicate member for Finnis has a supplementary, sir.
Oh.
Sir, indeed, to the Minister for Health, Can the Minister for Health inform the House as to whether doctors are being brought in from interstate to fill the vacancies at South Coast District Hospital as locums?
Oh, look, I need to find out, but it's not unusual for us to recruit doctors from interstate, for not just South Coast, but from right across our health system. Often doctors come from interstate, and something as Health Minister I welcome. It's very good to have doctors with interstate experience who want to come and work in our system. And contrary to the interjection of the Deputy Leader, you don't in fact need a 457 visa to work here if you're just coming from interstate.
The member for Schubert.
Glad I survived. My question is to the Attorney-General. Can the Minister update the House on when plans to merge or integrate the State Library and State Records functions, as outlined in the report prepared by Angela Allison, will commence?
Deputy Premier.
Look, I thank the honourable member for his question and his interest in my attire. Look, my recollection is that this was a proposal that was floating around the place going back a year or so. I think there was quite a bit of, I think antipathy is a fair word, maybe an understatement. In fact, I saw a number of people who told me that they were librarians, which I know from my personal experience to be generally quite demure people, wearing T-shirts saying things like "hands off our library" and "Hypatia forever," yes, in support of the great librarian of Alexandria. But I think that, as far as I can understand it, this proposition was so fulsomely rejected by these otherwise quite by a large number of very militant librarians that, as far as I'm concerned, it disappeared. I think the advocates of this were so intimidated by this cohort of angry librarians that they receded. And to the best of my knowledge, that's where the matter remains.
The member for Devonport.
Sir, my question is to the Minister for Police. Minister, what participation has the South Australian Government had with the National ICE Task Force?
Minister for Police.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. The South Australian Police have been present at the various hearings which have been held in South Australia. Also, I'm aware that until recent, and that was something which the police did off their own bat, actually, until recent times, the actual National Task Force did very little engagement, and we actually advised them that we were quite keen to be engaged in the process, and I understand that has changed. But but in terms of that, our police are very supportive and provide obviously intelligent or provide information and support where they can. It's what I can say is that the federal task force, like I said in the early stages, was a case where they literally rock up, and very few people knew they were rocking up. And but I understand we've remedied that.
Supplementary, member for Devonport.
Thank you, sir. So, to that end, Minister, did the SA Government make a submission to the National ICE Task Force as they have requested?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'll confirm whether we actually just appeared before them or was a formal submission. But I'm aware that there was discussions between our police and the task force. But I'll need to confirm whether that was just in terms of at a hearing or whether it was a formal submission. But I'll get back to you on that.
The member for Newland.
Thank you, sir. My question is to the Minister for Social Housing. How is the Samson Flat Recovery Centre assisting the residents in the aftermath of the January bushfires?
I thank the member for Newland for his question and also his continued interest in this area. Mr Speaker, the Samson Flat bushfire had devastating consequences for a considerable number of people in our community. In the aftermath, we now know that 12,548 hectares of land was burnt, that 25 houses were destroyed, with a further 44 damaged, that 196 outbuildings and 215 vehicles were destroyed. There was also an economic impact, with 13 small businesses being severely impacted and 914 livestock also being lost in the fire. What has been important since the fire has been the utilisation of the enormous goodwill and generosity of individuals and organisations that offered their assistance in the extraordinary time of need. The Samson Flat Recovery Centre at the Torrens Valley Community Centre continues to operate, with mobile centres at One Tree Hill and Kersbrook for a half a day each fortnight. The Community Reference Group, chaired by Recovery Coordinator Carleen Maywald, shares information, identifies priorities for action and keeps the local recovery committee informed about emerging issues and work happening on the ground. A Community Development Officer was appointed in March and continues to develop programs in order to connect with a range of demographic groups to provide support and develop resilience. The Recovery Centre has facilitated a number of community activities, including self-esteem workshops for teenage girls, a men's comedy night and community outings, which have led to the formation of local community support groups such as RAMBO. RAMBO, which stands for Retired Aged Men Being Out, had such a great time in the inaugural trip that they've decided to continue as a support group for men aged over 65 in the local community. The Community Development Officer through the Recovery Centre will continue to support groups like RAMBO to help the local community. Mr. Speaker, as time progresses, the impact of the bushfire on individuals and families is changing. It's changing to be more about assistance with psychological support and rebuilding. In response to this, Housing SA's Emergency Relief Functional Service implemented a case management program in mid-February 2015. An outreach service of door-to-door welfare checks is conducted by the Red Cross, with follow-up as required through the case management program. The Red Cross continues to conduct the outreach program and to provide support in the Bushfire Recovery Centre through the provision of psychological first aid and recovery resources. I'm advised that information has been provided to 451 identified properties, and recovery information packs have been left at another 242 properties. An additional 475 properties have been successfully contacted by telephone outreach. Mr. Speaker, there is still a lot of work to be done with the affected communities, and I commend every single individual and organisation that has played a role in the recovery effort.
Member for Giles.
Member for Giles? I don't have any more
No.
questions.
Member for Wright.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Tourism. Minister, how is the state government promoting South Australia to international markets?
The member for Unley is warned for the second and final time.
You don't sell the place sitting at home. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And
The member for Unley can leave for the next 45 minutes.
And I thank the member for Wright for the question. The visitor economy is worth $5.4 billion to South Australia, and there's 32,000 jobs across South Australia. It's not all in the city. Tourism is one of those great industries that employs people and engages small business right across South Australia. And we have $35 million in this latest state budget for the tourism sector. That's additional money that we're using on marketing, both interstate and overseas, and in creating new events and conferences to bring more people to South Australia from interstate and overseas. But last week we had the South Australian Tourism Exchange here in Adelaide, where we had tourism agents from Malaysia, from India and from Singapore. And they were shown around, and the member for Schubert keeps talking and making inane comments. We actually took these people up to his electorate, up up to the Barossa Valley. If he doesn't want to take the tourism industry seriously, we do. It's worth $5.4 billion. In estimates, he didn't ask a single question about tourism, and he was on the thing for an hour. Well, you spend money to make money, and I think people know that you don't sell stuff by sitting at home. So we had 9 buyers from Singapore. We had nine.
The member for Bright is called to order. I hope he'd do more to uphold standards of civility.
We had 9 buyers from Singapore, 9 from Malaysia and 4 from India, and we had 24 South Australian tourism operators who engaged in the tourism exchange. In the Barossa, among the places the delegates visited were the Lindock Lavender Farm, Maggie Beer's Farm Shop and Seppeltsfield Wine. Closer to Adelaide, the delegates were able to take part in a dolphin swim with Temptation Sailing and visited Cleland Wildlife Park and Birrenberg Farm. On Kangaroo Island, the delegates visited Clifford's Honey Farm, Island Pure Sheep Dairy, the Flinders Chase National Park, the Raptor Domain, that's a terrific tourism operation there, and Seal Bay, to name a few. And down in my neck of the woods, the delegates had the opportunity to visit Red Poles Gallery and Darrenberg Wines. Last Friday, the delegates were given the unique opportunity to explore Adelaide CBD by participating in an Adelaide Amazing Race Challenge, and also visited and experienced a number of our hotels in Adelaide during their stay. And we must point out that we've had 4 extra hotels come on line in the CBD in the past 2 years. That's 660 extra rooms that we have available to all the extra tourists that are coming to South Australia. We've got 1,700 more hotel rooms in the pipeline, with 7 new developments going to be open between now and March 2018. So the visitor economy is going well, and by conducting things like this tourism exchange with 3 very important markets for South Australia, we'll continue to grow that. We've set an ambitious target of $8 billion by 2020. We currently sit at $5.4 billion. So we've got a lot of hard work to do, but we're not going to leave any stone unturned as we chase that figure of $8 billion and 41,000 jobs.
The motion before